Your voice is an instrument. Does that make you a tool? I think, all joking aside, I wanted to give some serious thought to this very, very common. It's more or less dogma that is repeated to every student of singing, as far as I know, who gets voice lessons or in some other way consumes vocal pedagogy, especially classical singing pedagogy. And we never questioned this idea. In fact, when I question this idea, a lot of times I'm met with kind of a lot of raised eyebrows. Like, why would you even think to question this idea? But if it's such a big deal, then don't we kind of have to question it? If if it's not so important to you, then maybe just let me say that the voice isn't an instrument and leave it at that. But I think it is important to you and it is important to me. So let's take a look at the idea that your voice is an instrument. What do all instruments have in common that you can think of? Well, you can name some things, but the one thing that they're all going to have in common is that they aren't you. None of them are you. You can pick up an instrument and put it down. That seems to me to be a really big difference between your voice and an instrument. But I don't think that's enough for me to be making my point. I think in order to make my point, it helps to learn about a concept called emergence. And we see this concept in nature, so we can talk about it outside of ourselves. Have you ever wondered why the ants in an ant colony know what to do? Sure, okay, maybe you saw some documentaries and you saw the queen. The queen of the ant colony releases some pheromones, some scent signals, and that's picked up by the other ants. And then, they just respond. They know exactly what to do. And so when you look at an ant colony, it behaves intelligently. It can respond to like problems and solve problems, and it seems like it can like think about the future and stuff. That's pretty cool, but that doesn't tell us, just seeing that it happens doesn't tell us how it happens. Like, how does the ant know to respond to that chemical signal in that way? And when you isolate an ant, it doesn't seem to have any of this intelligence. It just kind of like it's like a robot or something. It just kind of does ant stuff. And it's not going to be producing a new colony, if you isolate it. It's on its own. It's got no intelligence. So it's like zero. How do you multiply zero by 1 million ants and wind up with something other than zero? Well, the answer is this emergence. Nobody really engineers the ant colony to work that way. Like, nobody designs the organization of an ant colony. Nobody grants intelligence to the individual ants. And yet, when you put them together, this emergence happens, and this intelligence emerges. An emergent system is not like a system you put together. Your brain cells are the same way. If you take an individual brain cell, it doesn't have the ability to think. But somehow, when you put them all together, when you multiply 0 by some number, you get some number other than 0. And that doesn't work like our stuff that we make. Stuff that we make sticks to the rules of engineering. So like regular math. If you have 1 million things with zero capability to do something, you have zero capability to do that thing. Times 1 million, which is 0. Your voice is operated by your brain. And some of what your brain can do and some of what you can do with your voice is influenced by what you're thinking about. And it can seem a whole lot like, therefore, these thoughts that I have are my technique when I sing. I think about doing something, and every time I think about doing that, it happens. But that doesn't work like that. You have influenced what happens. But what happens is the result of your influence plus an emergent system. And that's you. It's your whole organism. Your health, your fitness, your emotional state, your knowledge, yes. But also a whole bunch of other things that sometimes you control, sometimes you don't. And you control them in different proportions at different times. That's weird. And even though we can say this affects the instrumentalist as well. So when they sit at the piano, they are an emergent system. And how they feel is going to affect the performance, psychology, everything. That's still in play. But so is the piano. And that piano behaves like a clock. It's engineered. Somebody knows what every single piece does, and if it's not functioning the way that you expect, the only way to fix it is to find the piece that is defective, or the pieces that are defective, and fix them through engineering. You can't leave the piano out in the cold and expect it to get tougher and then keep its tuning more during weather changes. It simply swells when it gets hot and it shrinks when it gets cold and dry. And that's all there is to it. You don't work that way. When we do stuff to you, when you do stuff to you, or rather just when you do stuff, because you can't do stuff to you, you trigger some kind of response from an emergent system that you influenced, but you don't quite control. And you hear people talk about controlled chaos. They're talking about exactly this, the emergent property of the human voice. So I think it's time we stop telling people, actually, that their voice is an instrument. Your voice is not an instrument. It's not going to behave like an instrument, and learning to get it to do what you would like it to do is nothing like learning to play an instrument. Some of the things are done for you. You, on the first day you started singing, had control over your voice that any pianist would kill for if that translated into control over the piano. At the same time, you have all kinds of challenges that the pianist will never have to worry about. They never have to worry about the piano being sick. They never have to worry about the piano panicking or being distracted. You are going to have to worry about these things. And in the moments when you need your training to kick in, you are very unlikely to have control over the things that are going to be undoing your performance. The only time you're going to get to influence it is maybe ahead of time. And you may not find the problems that you're going to have until you invent them. And then you'll have to solve them. So when we're talking about these one-size-fits-all systems, or when we're talking about, this or that school, and you're giving an example of one person who does it and thinking, I can just copy their results. you're making a big mistake. You're never going to get to see how the instrument was put together because there is no instrument. You're not going to learn that from their teacher because their teacher doesn't know how to do it because it's not possible to engineer an emergent system. You may come across some of their influences. Yes, as I've said before, you can ask someone who or what their influences are, and then maybe interact with those influences and learn something about how they do what they do. But you may as well also just interact with them and trust that this emergent system that is you is trying to learn and synthesize things even if you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to do it because you don't need to know how to do it. It can't be learned, and it can't be unlearned. It's you. You can't stop doing it. So if you don't want to be a tool, stop saying that your voice is an instrument. And stop telling people that their voice is an instrument.